Good afternoon, folks. My name's Ben, and I am a knife maker. So, how did it all start for me? Well, I spent 12 years as a graphic and web designer, and loved it, totally loved it, but always had other things on the go. There was always a project, there was always something else to do. So whether it be fixing up an old car, or, I don't know, dry curing some meat in the outhouse at home, or, I don't know, making and mainly breaking furniture. I wasn't very good at the furniture. But there was always something that I wanted to do. I wasn't one for sat down in front of the telly and, after work and just vegging out. So I found myself at the dining room table with a pipe and watching these YouTube videos. So the first one was a good hour. There's a lot to smoking a pipe. It's not just that at all. So after the hour, I felt quite accomplished at the pipe smoking, and then ventured onto the, as we all do, the videos you may also like. So I started watching this first video of a guy smoking his pipe, talking about his knife collection. It was a hunting knife collection, and he was very passionate, and he was with his pipe, and I was with my pipe now, and I was loving it. Yeah, knives, yeah. And then eventually I felt comfortable clicking on another one. And the next video was of a guy in a garage, just had a chunk of steel, and he was grinding it down, and he made this kind of shoddy-looking thing. I thought, well, I'm good at shoddy-looking things. I'll try and make a knife. So I sat there at the kitchen table, very proud of myself. My wife was in the kitchen making some food, and I announced, "Darling," that's the pipe voice, by the way, "Darling, I'm going to make a knife." And she's like, as you can imagine, already I'm sat at the table smoking, and now I've told her I'm going to make a knife. Poor woman. So I ordered some steel. I went to the local hardware store and got some tools, and sat at the table and made this knife. The table's had a battering from me over the years, so there's holes in it. And so I made this knife, and there it was. So what made me carry on? With every other project, I'd done something, whether it be a bike. I'd then move on to something completely different, like a pen and ink drawing or something, just, polar opposites. But the knives, they stuck with me, and I think they stuck for two reasons. The first reason was simple. I just had some more material left over, and I thought, well, if I make that slightly better there and that better there, I could have a better knife. So I carried on doing that for a while. The second reason is this guy, Drew. I thought I'd label them for ease. Drew, I didn't know Drew 2.5 years ago. I was in a pub, don't judge, but I was there to sharpen the knives of the chef. He'd heard that I was making these knives in the cellar at home, and he said, "I've got a Japanese set of knives. Would you mind sharpening them?" So I thought there's a nice challenge in that. So I went to pick the knives up, and as I was leaving the pub, across the pub garden, I heard, "Are you the knife guy?" I kind of guess I am the knife guy. I'd never been called a knife guy before, but I had the knife roll, so it all seemed to fit. So I went over to Drew, and he said, "Could I take a look at what you've done?" So I unraveled the knife roll out, and he looked around, and he went to one knife. He said, "Yeah, okay, I'll take that one." So what do you mean you'll take that one? So no, I'd like to buy that. Now, at this point, I'd not been making knives to sell. I'd been making knives because I was enjoying making knives. Luckily, my wife at this point was there, and she said, "Yes, we are selling these knives, actually." By this point, we had quite a few knives doing absolutely nothing. So I stepped back, and they did some bartering, and Drew went off on his push bike, got some cash. I wrapped this knife up, and there it was. But it was like no other buying or selling experience I'd had before. I'd made this thing with my bare hands, and so I was emotionally attached to it. And so was Drew in a weird way. I'd never met Drew. He was the crazy guy that called the knife guy over. And he was emotionally attached to it. He could tell how long I'd taken on sanding the handle down and checking the straightness of the blade. And I was hooked on this feeling. Yeah, the money was okay, but the feeling of having somebody appreciate what I'd done was like no other feeling I'd had before. So I thought, well, what do I do now? Being a web designer and graphic designer, I thought I'd throw a website up, do some branding and all the gubbins that comes along with that, and just see if I can, A, sell some more, but better still, try and recreate that feeling that I had that first time. So that was 2.5 years ago. Where am I now? Well, if you want one of my knives now, I have a 14-month waiting list. A bit crazy. I've just made the knives for trophies for the Observer Food Monthly Awards, which was a fantastic event. I got to go and watch some of the best chefs in the country take away these things that I'd made. It's all a bit weird. But who am I making for? Do my knives appeal to everybody? I had a phone conversation with a guy a couple of months ago. He was adamant that he was having one of my knives. He knew the steel I was using, he knew why I was using it, he knew about the wooden handles, knew which one he wanted, even down to the mosaic pins that go through. He knew everything that he wanted. And we got to the end of the conversation, and he said to me, "So how much are they, Ben?" Now, as a maker, it's not cheap to make stuff. And I told him how much they were. And the conversation kind of petered off. We kind of stopped talking, and then the phones went dead, and I was gutted that I couldn't make this guy a knife because it was too expensive. A week later, after me thinking I'd never hear from him again, I had something in the post. It was a letter, and it just said, I've called him the 8 check guy, and it just said, "Ben, please find enclosed 8 post-dated checks." He said, "Please cash 1 a month until there's enough money in your account to make a knife for me." And that's why I'm doing it. Those are the kind of people that as a maker, I can't compromise on the materials that I buy. I'm making these knives with the hope that they would last forever. And in order to do so, I have to be careful about what I buy. And I can't compromise on the time it takes me. But what that showed me is that I'm making for people who care about where the products are coming from, who care about who's making them, in what conditions they're making them. And for me, that's why I do it. So now I've got a challenge for you guys. I mean, for me, this has been completely life-changing experience just from going. I'm not suggesting you all start smoking. But what I'm suggesting is, next time you need something, A, think about whether you really need it, and B, think, well, actually, can I make that thing? Is that something that I can make? And it's the most rewarding thing. You know, you could make or invent something that saves lives or changes the world or just makes you really happy, and that's where I am.